Listen, I love cash flowing, pockets growing, wake up blessed every morning. Just in case y'all didn't notice, I'm fucking shit up in this bitch and everybody knows it. Cash flowing, pockets growing, wake up blessed every morning.
Hey guys, welcome back to What's the Situation? Today is going to be a very different episode. We are not going to have any guests. Yours truly is the guest. We started the podcast with the 4 pillars of my life. And as we get into the podcast, you're going to hear more personal stories. So this episode is really to dive into my life and share my experiences. I want this episode to paint an accurate picture of who I am so you all can understand what my perspective is and just who I am as a person and what my heart is. I really feel like my life experiences have made me who I am today and helped shape that. And this podcast is a true passion project for me. For a very long time in my life, I felt like I was very different from other people. Like I didn't have one specific group or I didn't fit in 100% in one category. And I just want other people to know that's okay. You don't have to fit into one category. You can be yourself and people still love you. And you really love yourself and appreciate that. I knew starting this podcast, I was going to have to get really vulnerable and show the world or my 15 followers my life and open up and be authentic in that. And that can sometimes be difficult because social media, you either hype it up to be something that your life isn't, or I think you become vulnerable in a way that's, oh, look at me, I want a pat on the back. And that's not what this is about. But I really wanted to be able to connect with the community. And it's vulnerable when you open yourself up to that because you allow all eyes on you and judgment to be passed, and everyone's going to have an opinion. I know this podcast has probably already ruffled some feathers, and I knew that was a possibility and that was probably going to happen. And that's never my intention, is to upset anybody or offend anybody. But I needed to make sure that when I'm speaking, that I'm speaking my truth. I don't position myself to talk on other people's behalves, but everything in my podcast is my perspective on it. Everybody is going to have their own perspectives to how history wrote itself. And those people are always welcome. There's always an open seat if you want to share your side of the story or your perspectives on things. This episode is going to be about me talking about my life. So it's going to be involving many people and just my experience with it. Let's dive in. So my childhood, I feel like it was really like a tag team event that like just pure chaos sometimes. I was raised by my mom, my grandmother, my aunt, my uncle, my other grandparents. I feel like in so many ways I had this great TV childhood experience, and I'm so grateful for that. In other ways, I had to grow up really quickly and I experienced some not so great things that a child ideally shouldn't have to experience. But again, I think all of my experiences have shaped who I am today, and I'm super grateful for that, no matter the hardship on that. So I feel like I have to get into starting from birth. Let's go into there. My mom was a very young mother. She was 17, 18 when she ran away with my dad to follow the Grateful Dead. That's how every good story starts out. My mom ran away with the Grateful Dead. I was conceived in Dallas. And so they were, okay, we need to settle down now, plant some roots. And my uncle, her brother, was living in New Mexico at the time. And so they decided to stay hunker down here. I think the relationship, they were young and it was rocky. They both did probably not great things. They were young and foolish. And I think my mom became homesick. And so she went to go visit my grandmother back up in Orchard Park where she grew up, her other part of her childhood. And so she went up there for a trip and then decided that she wasn't going to come back to New Mexico. And so my dad moved back home. I think they stayed together for probably about a year or two after that. And then again, I just don't think it was a great match at that time. I think they were both young and immature and just not sure of how to balance a relationship out, which is logical because they were very young. But that fizzled out, just wasn't a great fit. And that's when my relationship with my father started to fizzle out. So there was this restaurant across from the Buffalo Bills Stadium in Orchard Park, and it was a plot of land, and my mom used to work at this restaurant. And her and the owner of the restaurant. She really liked her. My mom worked a lot, but my mom started secretly dating her son. And I don't think they planned on it to be a secret. I think they were just like, they gone out one night and had a connection and it took off, and they wanted to make sure that there was something there before they told his whole family. But anyway, the mother found out before they had told him, and she was not crazy about the situation. I think it's just because she felt like they were hiding it from her. And from that day forward, things just escalated and just was a very toxic environment for everybody. So with this relationship, it came, I can't remember the timing exactly, or I'm not 100% sure about this, but maybe a year in to them dating, my mom became pregnant. And my mom, being a single mother as it was and working multiple jobs, didn't have a stable environment for another child. Obviously, the environment with his family was very toxic and volatile. And I think my mom had to make a really hard decision, one that I know that it pains her to have made this decision, and I'll let her speak on that story at a different time. But she decided to give her child up for adoption and make sure that child had a great, loving family and have every advantage that she thought that she would not be able to give this little girl. So that happened. And I would say, not that I think my mom was trying to hide it from me, but I know that I found out later when I was like 8 or 9. Now, meanwhile, when this all happened, I was about 2 or 3, and then found out around 8 or 9 was something I didn't remember. I came upon this adoption photo album book that the adopting family had given my mother. And I was like, why are you pregnant here? And why am I in this picture? What is going on? So that was like a big shock to me at 8 or 9. And my mom was like, I just wanted to wait for the right time for you to understand this. So since then, we've kept up. I know we wrote letters to my half sister, Casey. We never fully connected until I had received a DM from her through Instagram. And it was while I was going through my separation and divorce, fresh into that. We reconnected probably a couple of years ago. She'd come to visit us. And so that was a really fun and interesting time, is like meeting my half sister and rebuilding that relationship. We can go into that on another episode as well. So my mom and Sean's relationship probably lasted a few years after that. They were engaged, but it just wasn't a healthy relationship. Again, it was volatile. They were young, and no offense to my mother, but I think she's always loved a little chaos. She was raised in a very like stable household, and I think she's always gravitated towards chaos. And I think baby daddy number 2, I don't know. I think he was a stable man in a lot of regards. He took care of her financially in ways, or took care of, added to the household and that kind of thing. But I just don't think he was a great man. I know that everybody has their struggles and with what they grew up with. I wasn't crazy about him, and my family wasn't crazy about him. And so I am glad that relationship wrapped up. It needed to. Growing up, I didn't see the picture perfect or like a good model for relationships. So growing up, we lived with my grandmother in South Buffalo, New York. And in so many ways, I had a great childhood. One of those TV ones where the kids go out in the morning and come back in once the street lights come on. I was definitely a tomboy. Buffalo is a working class city. You have a lot of Irish and Polish families and traditions, a lot of Catholics, but it was a fun place to grow up in the way of it's close knit. Like I remember any game day, like Buffalo Bills football, it's just a way of life. There's not anything else that you do there. On Sundays, it's game day. Like when the Bills would score, you would like, people had bells on their porch and they would get that out there and ring them. It was just like a fun environment in that way. I know it doesn't have the same appeal that Raleigh or big metro areas have. It doesn't have the money to support like these lavish lifestyles. Orchard Park is a little more ritzy and stuff like that, but South Buffalo is definitely a working class environment, but they're great people. It's truly a special place. I consider both places my home. Buffalo, there's so many parts of it I really love. So I was definitely a tomboy when I was younger. I loved doing sports and just playing outside and water balloon fights. We used to build snowmen. We'd be out there for hours. It was a true childhood experience. We'd ride our bikes, go down to the corner store and save up money and get popsicles. It was a pure childhood in that regard. My mother worked a lot during my younger childhood years. And so I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, her mother. And my grandmother was such an amazing woman. She was very strong and independent out of necessity. She taught me so much about myself and who I wanted to be. She kept everything together. She was a woman that didn't judge. If I had an issue or a problem, I could go to her and she wouldn't tell me, oh, you need to do this, Sydney. You need to do that. She always just listened and said, what do you think you need to do? Very much so enjoyed having her around. We used to garden and I would help her out with her home. And just watching her, she really built a little humble, comfortable life. It wasn't anything amazing in the sense of ritzy, but she had the most gorgeous home on the block. She put a lot of love and care into it, and a lot of time and effort and money went into that, building something that she could be proud of. So I always take a lot of tips from what she did. And I really admire who she was. But she was tough as nails, I'll tell you. She really was. I typically went over to my dad's parents, so my grandparents on that side. They had a pond and had a bunch of ducks, so they were always named Grandma and Grandpa Ducks. I just loved going over there. It was always so much fun. My grandmother, she was just like, I don't know. Later in life, I found out some things, but as a child, I just remember her being so vivacious and fun and laughter and like just this smile. And we are so much alike too, because we were both hard-headed. So half the time we would just laugh and the other half we would go head to head with each other. I learned how to play poker over there because Stoys, well, we will gamble our whole house on everything and we like a drink. But everything about her, she used to have this butterfly tattoo on her wrist, and I just thought it was so edgy. Ooh, how fun. And she was probably one of the first ones to get a tattoo in that decade, but she loved purple. Everything was purple. If you knew Ruth Stoy, literally everything was purple. Later in her life, she had this silver, like white silver hair. It was so gorgeous. But later in her life, she started dyeing it purple. She loved... This is a funny story. I'm just going to slip this in here. So when she started like getting sick and going downhill, I had gone back up there and was flying back and forth between Raleigh and Orchard Park. And we went into her room and she had all these pictures of like men, like Patrick Mahomes, Brad Pitt, Matthew McConaughey. It was just like random, like the Patty Mahomes thing sent me, but it was like who she thought was cute, just plastered in her room or cut out. It was hilarious. So that's just who she was to the core, is just sassy and vivacious. My grandfather was an inventor for Fisher Price. So literally I had the best childhood with that experience because my grandpa was an inventor and made toys. They used to call him Toy Boy Stoy. So he would build new prototypes and I would test them out. Who as a child doesn't want that? So that was so much fun. Their house was like a zoo though. They sat on a couple acres of land in Orchard Park and my grandfather was just a tinkerer. So like in their front yard, their house looked like the Beverly Hillbillies. So they would just have like cars parked out in the driveway that he was always working on. I know Orchard Park, town of Orchard Park probably had 5,000 fines on them for the different things, but they didn't care. They loved animals. My grandmother loved animals. She was a vet tech. And I'm not even joking you when I say they had 23 cats at one point. They've had 23 cats. The whole basement was like converted over into this cat sanctuary. And they had ducks, they had roosters, you name it, they had it. My grandfather really was like a father figure to me. On the weekends, he would go over and he'd be like, all right, Sydney, you've got to be prepared to change your own oil and tires and do this. Every weekend we would have a project. We would build stairs or just change oil or whatnot. His famous saying was always like, now when you get married, your money is your money and his money is y'all's money. He used to have this, maybe it was a Frigidaire refrigerator that was like a gas one. It was like one of the retro ones. And he always used to have Pepsis and Mountain Dews in there, like fully stocked. But I just had a fun time over there. I really connected with my grandpa and loved him and loved spending time with him. And he was a man of few words, but I know he loved me. He'd always go, hey, kid, come over here. And he would have a 50 rolled up and he'd be like, hey, don't tell anybody here. because my grandma would be like, don't give her money. Well, I just spent $200 on her at the arcade. Every Saturday we'd go to the arcade first. And then I would bring friends over and they just had it was always a fun time. My grandmother allowed us to do basically whatever I wanted to do. If I wanted to paint a door in the house, she'd go at it, paint the door. I still think in the house there's this door that's painted with me and my friends. Like we did this design up there. And then one of my favorite things about the house, and I will take right now, we currently still have the house, but there is this door that led into the basement, and everybody in our family, so like 60 people, it's just their heights as they grew. So everyone's heights are on there. And that is probably the most sentimental piece to me, is that door, because from a young age, I've been on there since I was a baby, going up to just like probably last year. And Sterling, that was the first thing when we visited. I was like, he's got to go on the door. So I'll have to get a picture and kind of show that to you guys one day. Some of my summers were also spent coming down to North Carolina. So my mom's family is originally from North Carolina area. She was born in Burlington, and my aunt is 10 years older than my mom. So my aunt and uncle stayed down here and built their life up, and they had moved in their early 30s to Nightdale and lived in Planters Walk. And as a child, I loved going to my aunt's house. I just always thought, like, when I would come into North Carolina, I loved Raleigh. It just felt like home to me. The smell, I loved warm weather, but there was nothing more fun than going down to North Carolina, hitting up the Planters Walk pool with my friends, because I would make friends in the neighborhood and stuff like that. And then we would go down to Atlantic Beach. So literally when we say roots of Atlantic Beach, like I used to go there all the time. We would rent condos and go down. And then Catherine came when I was about 5 years old, and like my best friend was born, like my sister, the one that you like fight with, love, and are there. And I was so excited because I felt like I was actually getting a sister. So as I got older, we spent some summers down here. My other cousin had come with us too, and we would go down to the beach and have fun. So around 11 or 12 is when the conversation started. Is we have a very small family. It's my mom, her sister, and then she has a brother, and then obviously my cousin and that, and then their brother also, he has 2 kids. But outside of that, it was just us and our grandmother. And so I really wanted to move down here, and I think there were just more opportunities. My uncle owns an electrical engineering firm, and so my mom started working for him and was going to go back to school to be an accountant. So we moved here, I think it was in September, maybe of 2003 or 4. No, probably earlier than that, because I was in 8th grade. But anyway, the beginning of 8th grade came here. And that was really a doozy on so many levels, because as much as I wanted to be here, the North and the South are very different. And I love so much, like I feel at home here, but it just took some adjustment. Obviously, when I was coming in, everybody called me the Yankee girl. And it just took time because I was used to different ways of life. So when we moved here, we were looking for a house, and then we moved into Durant Trails, which is an awesome neighborhood when you were moving in. There was lots of kids in the neighborhood, but again, it was very different. No one really went outside to play a lot. So that's what I was used to, because kids up north just don't have the money like that. Like their parents are paycheck to paycheck, or at least in the area that I grew up in. And then down here, people have more spending money or dispensable income. And so I walked into a school where everybody was wearing Abercrombie and Fitch, and one, I couldn't really afford it. I remember just getting a crush at school, and I'm sure he could care less. I remember like writing those notes or whatever. He was in love with some girl who looked like she was in her 30s, very mature, but she was literally our age. I remember getting this haircut to replicate her hair, and I literally looked like a 30-year-old mother. So that's fun. Yeah, again, my aunt and uncle are like parents to me and really have been a part of my life in that regard. But shortly after moving here, about 6 months in, I severely broke my leg on a trampoline. One of my neighbors had a trampoline and we were all jumping on it. I landed and literally the bone was sticking through my skin, both bones. So I had to have a reconstructive surgery where they did titanium rods in my leg. And that took me out of school for a couple months because the break was so bad that the doctor was afraid that if anybody bumped into me and I fell, that it would shatter my leg. So I had to be out of school after I had just gotten into a new school and trying to make friends, had to be out of school for a couple months. So that obviously put me behind in meeting people and getting into my clique, and then also put me behind in school. So just struggling from day one on that one. And again, to go back to The Southern way is a little bit different. Curriculum was a little bit different. So I wasn't used to like how things rolled in school. Also, until I moved here, I had no clue what carpool was because in my area, we didn't have that in Buffalo. Everyone took the bus. And anybody who came by car, it was more of the situation of either you were late and your parents were dropping you off, or it was like the special transportation vehicles. So completely, when someone said carpool, I said, I have no clue what you're talking about. But it also felt different too, because I felt like I was around like people that I could click with, but our experiences were very different. They're coming home, coming from a very nuclear family, and I was coming from a single mother. I lived with our grandma. It was just very different. We didn't have a lot of money, so I didn't have the resources that everybody else did. So I just felt out of place in that. I don't fit over here, but then I don't fit over here in these groups. High school was definitely rough in a lot of ways because of not feeling like I found my clique or big group of people. I would always look at the really popular kids who had all these like groups of people and be like, oh man, I'm so social and I would love to have something like that. But I didn't. And I didn't feel comfortable enough of pushing myself out into those environments because maybe they would have accepted me. I don't know. But I think it was my sophomore year, Caitlin and I met in drama. And so we really built a friendship over the 3 more years of high school. But she was busy with her sports and stuff like that. And then I had met another group of friends in freshman year that some of them I clicked with, some of them I didn't. But I always felt through high school that I just couldn't find like my actual true clique. Maybe found a couple people here and there that I really got along with, but I just always felt out of place. I did participate in a lot of clubs because I wanted to put myself out there. So I was in student government and drama club. I think I was French club vice president and then president of SAD club and was really involved in all of that stuff. But I was, when I tell you the most, I was just not graceful. I was not a graceful teen. All these girls would sit there and take hours to get ready. And I had the curliest, frizziest hair back in high school. If you knew me, go ahead and send in some pics because my hair has changed so much. But it would take hours for me to wash and dry and straighten my hair. And I was more concerned with sleep. And also, I didn't have a lot of money. So, like, clothing wasn't something that, like, I didn't have Abercrombie shirts or Hollister shirts or all those things just lying around. We just didn't have money for that. So I don't think I put as much as I wanted to be that. I knew that I really couldn't. So I started working a job when I always worked from the age of 14. I used to clean my uncle's office and do things like that, babysit a lot. And then I started working at Goodberry's. So that was fun. But yeah, just wasn't a very graceful teenager. I remember wiping out. Like if there was an awkward situation in a movie that could happen, it happened to me. I probably wiped out in the cafeteria stairs like 5 times throughout my whole high school career. That's fun doing that in front of like hundreds of people that you're trying to look cool in front of. But I think it happened so much that I just was like, okay. I think that's one reason my high school career is why I don't care as much anymore, is because once you've already done all that stuff, like you embarrass yourself 1,000 times, it's like, you're used to it. The first time sucks, second time's a little less, but yeah. However, one thing that I did learn in high school was I learned what I wanted to do for my career. In high school, my aunt and grandmother had started up the Gator Bug. They were doing handbags and then started selling gift things and belts and just like small apparel accessories. And I fell in love with that. I used to follow them around and go to different junior league shows with them. And then everybody would come to me for like their Liza B belts and shoes. So I was like sitting there like dealing belts out of my book bag to all the popular kids I wanted to be friends with. But I did know then that's what I wanted to do. Anybody who would listen to me, I'd be like, I'm going to own a clothing boutique. We always laugh because Caitlin and you used to tell everybody at the age of 15 that you were going to own a clothing boutique. And I'm like, yes. I just remember my house was on a cul-de-sac. And so you could see one street and then on the back side of like in our backyard, you could see another street. I just remember like these group of kids that I went to high school with were all out there. And I don't know why I didn't just go out there and introduce myself. Probably because I was insecure and was like, what if they say, gross, get away from me. I just remember wishing that I could be a part of that group and have something to go do. I spent a lot of time either at the house or over at my aunt and uncle's with Catherine. But my mom had gotten into we had gotten into a pretty bad car accident where a dump truck had hit us back in Buffalo before we had moved here. And there was just so much. She had to have surgery on her ankle, on her back several times. So she was in a lot of pain and just couldn't move. This is like during the height of the opiate candy handout that they were just passing them out like Tic Tacs. So she was in a lot of excruciating pain and going to doctor's appointments, barely able to move, having multiple surgeries. So that was rough because it wasn't like we were out going to do things on the weekend. But I spent a lot of time over at my aunt and uncle's with Catherine, and we had fun playing Barbies and doing all the things that kids do, going down to the beach. That was a big thing. I think too, my aunt and uncle really felt for me. And so they tried to provide me every opportunity to have a really great life in a lot of ways. I really wanted to take tennis lessons, but I did not want them to just pay for them. So they'd be like, okay, we'll clean the house. And that way you can have money to go do tennis lessons. I had started taking tennis lessons over at Northridge Country Club and just fell in love with tennis. I really loved it. And it became a big passion of mine. For whatever reason, I didn't try out for the tennis team. I think I was just afraid, and I hadn't played it long enough to really be ingrained in it. Or kids who play tennis, I feel like started when they were like 8 at the very latest. And here I was 14 doing tennis, but I do wish I would have pushed myself more with that and tried out with that. But my aunt and uncle definitely tried to give me every advantage that they could to let me feel like I fit in more. So a lot of the weekends that I had were spent over at their house. And during that time, my uncle was in the throes of really building his business. So Catherine and I on Saturdays and Sundays in the morning would go to his business. And so we had this routine. We would either stop off at Biscuitville or Bojangles. We would go get ourselves breakfast, and then we would go into the office. And Catherine and I would just play office forever. And it's hilarious because there are people who still work at the business now, who actually a lot of people still work there, but they saw us as 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds playing at their desk, probably being like, don't touch my phone again. But we just had the best time. And I think that really, provided the spark of like entrepreneurship, watching him like work so hard and build something that was so amazing. I think I was like, oh, I want to do this. And just watching him work really, it inspired me to want to have my own success story. My uncle came from a large family in Burlington, and they really didn't have a lot, and all the kids have done really great for themselves. And just watching that success story really lit a fire as if he could do it with nothing, surely I can do it. So just working on that, I think that's going to be my life goal continuing. I'm always feel like trying to be better than I was the day before. Through school, I really struggled. There were classes that I got A's and B's in, and there were classes I got C's in. My mom never really put too much emphasis on report cards. I really didn't feel like I was going to go to college. Not that I wanted the typical college experience, but I just could not handle the stress of school. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't take the SATs. My mom never pushed for that. I wish that maybe she would have pushed a little more so I had more opportunities on things if I wanted to later. Once graduation came through, I think I had maybe a 2.8. So it wasn't like I was going to any big school by any means. And I just needed to take time off and really figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I really enjoyed makeup. My mom for Christmas one year had gifted me like a MAC gift card, and we went to the MAC counter, and there was this amazing artist. And I remember he did this bright blue eye, and he was phenomenal. I know that he did print work and stuff like that and editorials, but I just left there feeling so beautiful. My skin looked amazing. My eyes looked amazing. I just had the best time. And after that, I was like, I want to go be a MAC artist. That's what I want to do too. I was like, if the boutique thing can't work out, then I want to do that. So I thought for a while that I would go up to New York City. I had glamorized. I love the city. I don't care what anybody says. My family hates going to New York, but I love it. I could live there, and I could live there right now with Sterling and have an amazing time. It's so expensive, and the school that I wanted to go to was like $20,000, and I didn't have $20,000 for school. So during my senior year, my mother had received a pretty decent settlement from the car accident. And so that gave us a little more flexibility. And she got really into travel blogs because we wanted to go travel after graduation. And so she had started reading this one blog and talking to the guy who did the blog, and she started seeing him or like talking to him in a romantic way. And so at the end of my senior year, she went to Australia because he lived in Australia. And so she went to go visit him. And then she came back, I think like a week or so later. And then we actually left for a backpacking trip through Europe. We were gone for about a month. And that was probably the best experience I've had. We went all over and we just got to meet like different people and see different cultures. And I am so grateful for that experience. I think it changed me in a lot of ways and like my outlook and also what was possible, what money would give. And yeah, so when I came back, I just knew that I wanted to figure out what I was going to do. I feel like from 18 to 21 or 20, 2021, I really struggled with my identity and what to do. I felt like I didn't have any money. I didn't have any opportunities. And it was just a struggle. I started dating a guy at the age of 18. That fall after I had turned and come back from Europe, I started dating a guy, Jesse, who's 21. He's always very loyal, wanted the best for me, but was going through his own life struggles. I started working at Applebee's. And if you've ever worked in the restaurant industry, you can meet some really great people. And I still talk to the people that I worked with at this time. And there's so many of us who've really leveled up and moved on and used it as a stepping stone. But the other people will know that restaurant and bar experience or work can get really toxic. It's not a great environment if you're looking to propel forward in other careers. You can get stuck in it because you can make some good money, but it's a big drug environment. Alcohol, drugs, bad decisions. Not all of it. Not everybody does that, but it kind of fosters that environment. Doing that for a couple of years, I think really opened my eyes to what kind of life I didn't want. I had moved out when my mom had decided that she was going to move to Australia. We'll get into that in a different thing. But anyway, really struggled with that because I felt like there were some people that I really connected with, but the group as a whole, I felt like they weren't going in the direction that I wanted my life to go. I wanted to be successful in the ways that I wanted to be. And I knew that environment probably wasn't going to foster the future that I wanted. The eye-opening experience for me really was, I remember there was a mother and daughter duo who worked at Applebee's. The mother was probably like in her late 50s. The daughter was like 16. Now, this mother had two other kids. She had the daughter who was the oldest, who was about 16 at the time, a boy who was around 14, and then a younger daughter who was like 9 or 10. And there were just a couple instances that duo really opened my eyes up to, I don't want to be in this life anymore. So the first instance was I was sitting at a table, like wrapping up my shift, eating lunch or dinner or whatnot. And they had come over and they were talking to me. And the daughter was going to drop out of high school. And she had bad grades or something like that. And she was talking to me. I said, this is something, let me tell you, I'm only a couple of years older than her at this time, but I was like, you failing out and dropping out is not going to lead you where you want to go. You've talked about what you want to do with your future. You want to not have the same life as your mom, but you dropping out is not going to provide that. It's going to be really hard for you to get into those circles without schooling or even just like education where a trade school. And so I'll never forget this because this woman was from Florida and like she had that raspy smoker's voice and she's like, yeah, tell her, Sydney, I've been trying to talk some sense into her. And I just looked at her and I was like, you're her mom. You're the one who's supposed to be telling her like this is what's required out of you. I remember too, because she also allowed her to have a 23-year-old boyfriend that lived with them, which I'm like a 16-year-old and a 23-year-old. Okay. But I lost all respect for her in that moment. Is like you're having a 19-year-old try to talk sense into your daughter when you should be the one. You should be like, do you want to have this life? Every day she complained about coming into Applebee's. She didn't want to do it. So that I just went off on her. And then the other time was, this was shortly after, maybe like in the same week or two. One of my friends that worked there, we were going out. Again, everybody smokes weed. One of my friends was like, hey, I've got to stop off and go over to meet them and pick up my stuff. And I was like, okay. So she's like, oh, they're staying at this extended stay on Capitol Boulevard. Now, if you know that area, I've been into some sketchy neighborhoods and areas, and that doesn't bother me, but it is a whole different world. When people say, get yourself out of this situation, like it's just a whole different world of things. You don't have opportunities. It's very hard. If you ever want to really see how the poverty line is divided and see the different worlds, go into that. And that's one thing that I'm so grateful to have been a part of both worlds, because I struggled. I worked 3 jobs. But so I thought I had it bad. I'm working 3 jobs and living in a shithole. And then we go over to this extended stay and we walk in, and it's the mom, her husband, who's the stepdad, the older daughter with her 23-year-old boyfriend, the son who was bright. He was bright as hell. He had like great grades. I always wondered what happened to him. And then the little daughter, and then some other really sketchy people in there, which, like, there's a 9-year-old girl in this hotel room. Like, what is going on? And so they're doing their trade off, and the little girl comes over and is like, Sydney, can I show you my room? And so I'm thinking that, like, in a hotel, you know how they have the doors that connect the suites. So I'm thinking that clearly 10 people aren't staying in the 2-bed hotel extended stay. So I'm thinking that she's going to take me into another room. So she's like, come here. And there's those children like play tents that are the circular ones that are around like 4 or 5 feet wide. There's 2 of them. One's like blue, and then the other one's like this like pink princess one. She's, come down here, come into my room. And that shit, whoo, child, that broke my heart. I'll never forget. That fucked me up. She was so excited to show me this tent that was her room. And growing up, I had a very loving family. Like, we struggled in a lot of ways, but I always had a room. I always had what I needed. That tore me the fuck up, because as a parent, I can't even imagine being okay with that situation of, here's 2 able-bodied people who could really push. Like, she wouldn't take shifts at work. She would leave early and complain about everything. And I just couldn't imagine, like, sitting there allowing your kid to think that a tent in a hotel extended stay is their room. And I know those kids saw some really shady things go on, and God only knows what happened when the mom wasn't around. And that just tore me up. I thought in that moment, hell no, I have got to get out of the restaurant work, or get out of this restaurant that I'm in, because I cannot, this is not okay. I never want my life to go into this realm. And I just acted like it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. She had like little pictures that she had drawn up on and taped them on her tent. And that was the saddest thing to me, because I was like, oh my God, where am I? Who am I out with? What's going on here? I never try to judge anybody for where they're at, but I do think that when you surround yourself with certain people, that's where you're going to be at. And I just didn't want to have that life. So pretty much immediately after I'd gone home, and I had talked to my boyfriend, Jesse, at the time, and I was like, I don't want this life. I know his things were edging to staying in that group, and he was super supportive. You need to get into school. So I went to go sign up for school at Wake Tech. And I was like, I've got to get out of Applebee's. Like, I just can't do this anymore. So I had gone and looked for different jobs and came upon this listing for jewelry designing, bridal jewelry designing. So I started working at this like little bridal jewelry place and loved it. Like, I made jewelry, really enjoyed that. Started going back to Applebee's and bartended here and there, and then just decided like it wasn't for me. So around the time, I'm trying to think, it was maybe around that time that I realized I didn't want to be a part of that. My mom had moved back. Literally, she went on a 3-week vacation to Australia and came back. So that was maybe a little bit before that, a couple months before that. But when she came back, it was just really unstable. She had a mental break there. And again, I'll let her talk to her story if she wants to come on here and tell that. But it just wasn't good. She had gotten really sick. She had gotten Crohn's disease. And that's like when her addiction started to pain pills. She just didn't have a life. She was always in and out of hospitals. But it was a difficult time. And with Jesse, I didn't want to go down the road that he was opening up or letting come into his life. And I was just like, we need to break up now. He completely understood. I think it was a sad day when we broke up, like when he left, because he moved back home, because we loved each other. I think we cared about each other a lot, but we knew that we were just going in different directions. And I honestly think that he knew that I deserved better. I moved in with my aunt and uncle. And so I went back to school, was doing that and working at the jewelry store, and really enjoyed it. During this time of working and living with my aunt and uncle, I had a great time. I got that spark back. Like, I started feeling, the more I like put myself in other areas with people that I wanted to be with and wanted to emulate, I started feeling like who I was meant to be. And around that time, I just started dating. I'd been in a 2-year relationship and really hadn't seen anybody outside of that, and just started kind of like making a list of what was really important to me. I did want stability. I know that. I was looking for a husband, not because I felt like I needed someone to commit to, but because I had really valued the relationship that my aunt and uncle had. And I was like, I want a husband like my uncle. He takes care of the family and is just like good and reliable. And so I made the list of things that I wanted in a partner. Maybe not like in the sense, oh, I want to go get married, but someone that I could build a life with. And so I just went through guys, and it was hilarious because my uncle would be like, oh, you going out tomcatting today? Or everybody would be like, we're not learning his name because he won't be here for long. So it was just funny. And then one night I met Adam. And when we first met, the first night, everything went off perfectly. Then we went on a couple dates afterwards, and it would be like the first like hour or two would be really awkward. Like he was afraid to talk to me or warm up. And then we'd warm up and everything would be amazing. But this went on for a couple weeks. And maybe about the second week, one of my friends was going on a beach trip and within like a month and was like, hey, do you guys want to go down to the beach? My boyfriend's going, do you want to bring Adam? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I invited him to this trip. And then as like the dates go on, part of the date was really awkward. And then the other part, and I'm like, he just did some really corny shit that I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if there's like always an attraction there or if we're not compatible. So I was like, shit. I invited him on this a week-long beach trip down to Emerald Isle, and I'm going to be stuck with him for a week. And I was like, I just need him to know that this is not a romantic thing. Like maybe we should just be friends. So I called him up and I was like, listen, I really like you. I feel like some things are off. Maybe we're not compatible, or there's just like this weird vibe. And I know we're supposed to go on this beach trip. Like maybe we could go on the beach trip. I think I just want to be friends. I don't know if there's like a true connection. And to his credit, he was like, yeah, no. I care about you way more than a friend, and I'm not going to be friend zoned. And I don't know if it was like the game of things, but I was like, ooh, okay, let's just have dinner. Let's talk about this. So we went out to dinner. I don't know if it was just like there was no pressure on the situation anymore or what, but everything just melted away. The stress was not there. We just hit it off. And in that moment, I was like, this is the relationship that I want. So we started dating and things moved quickly. We went on that beach trip. And after that beach trip was like heaven to me. We had so much fun, a genuine good time, and just really clicked with each other. And I was like, he's like my best friend, but someone I enjoy being around. And when I came home from the beach trip, I was just like, I looked at my mom and I was like, I'm going to marry this man. And I'm pretty sure when I know that something clicks for me. And I just knew that was the person I valued him. Things definitely moved pretty quickly. Not to say everything was perfect because I was still trying to figure out how to be a girlfriend because I hadn't really seen like a healthy relationship. So I know that there was a lot of missteps with things, but we still had a great time and really built something amazing. We got engaged very quickly within 3 months. And I don't regret that decision at all. I don't regret getting married. I know that's the person that I was meant to marry at that time. But I always laughed because I always told my friends that I didn't think I would get married because I didn't think I would love somebody enough to have that commitment. And I was the first one in the friend group to get married and have a kid. So when we started, we got engaged and we didn't get married until about 2 years later. But during that time of getting engaged, Adam was in school at State and then had started up at a property management company. I went over to the property management company because there was a lot of career growth there. And we really just spent 2 years building up from nothing. And we did a lot of work. We went from making no money to like really being stable for ourselves. And so that was a great thing. I think everybody was like, oh, this is going to end terribly in the sense of they're not going to make it financially or whatnot, but we worked hard to prove people wrong in that and enjoyed our time together. At least I did. I remember I used to, when Adam was taking 18 credit hours at State and then working full time, and there would be a day like I had off this day and he had to go to school, but then later on he had off in the day too. And I would drop him off at State because we lived off of Gorman in this like little tiny bungalow on Carlton Avenue. I would drop him off at school, and every time I'd be like, all right, make good decisions. That was like our thing. And then I would go and pick him up. And we just had a really fun time, like getting to know each other and experiencing life. Again, there's hardships with anything, but I really enjoyed it. So we built our way up in the property management company, and then we got married. What was it? October 5th, 2013. And we already had, I think a lot of people probably think that we had a shotgun wedding. That wasn't the case. We had already planned on getting married because we've been engaged for 2 years and we're just trying to save up money to have a wedding. But So we were planning like a bigger wedding, and then we had gone to a friend's wedding and we were like, yeah, no, we just want a more intimate wedding. So we had scheduled to do 50 people at my aunt's house, but found out I was pregnant a couple months before the wedding. But yeah, so we found out when we were pregnant, and that's really when we were just starting to get some financial security in. So we really didn't have that time to enjoy each other with like money and going on trips and all that. And that's one thing I regret. I think things might have ended up differently if we were able to build that with, we had already been together for several years, but having money and being able to go on vacations and stuff, I feel like I wish we would have been able to have that luxury a little longer. Obviously, that was our fault. So I had Sterling, and now looking back on it, I realize I had strong postpartum depression. And it creeps up because it creeps up in different ways. You're not like, oh my God, I'm just going to cry. But it was just stressful. Like I was in my selfish era and then having a child to take care of and trying to figure out how to juggle. And I was in I wanted everything to look perfect phase too. I wanted things to be nice and tidy. And so trying to figure out how to juggle motherhood and have everything figured out was a big stress. But I had also not worked for my whole entire life. So being just taking care of a kid who's screaming, crying, and up all night. He had really bad reflux. I could not sleep. I couldn't do anything. But I started like a little side like project. I was like, okay, I'm going to open up an Etsy store. So I got a vinyl cutter for a couple $100, and like my investment was like $300 or $400. Opened that up and started doing decals, and it actually took off very quickly. So by the time I took the full maternity leave, and by the time I went back to work, my Etsy store was so busy that I was like staying up until 1 o'clock in the morning doing all this stuff and then having to go into work and then juggling being a new mom. And luckily we had my mother who was taking care of Sterling, but it was just a lot. And at the time, Adam was like, listen, if you want to quit your job, he had just got promoted to being a property manager at a really stable property. And so he's like, we can cover the bills with my stuff if need be, and we'll figure it out. And if you need to go back to work, then you'll go back to work. So I was so grateful for that opportunity to be able to start my own thing. But again, I was juggling motherhood when I got back, and a really successful business took off a lot quicker than I thought it would be. I made a lot of money during that time. Shortly after I quit work and started my own business, my old boss had called me to see if I wanted to. There was an investment firm out of Austin, Texas, who had approached him to start a property management company where they would buy up older properties and renovate them and raise the rents and whatnot in those areas. And so he's like, hey, do you want to do this? And I was like, no, like I'm over the property management thing. I really want to just invest my time in. And that's a lot of work when you're starting a company like that. And so I was like, I really want to invest my time in my business. And he's like, do you think Adam would want to do it? And so that's where the drama started. Adam, we had talked about a number where we wanted him to be if he was going to do that, because obviously I just quit my job and started this new venture. And so that number wasn't met. And I thought that he was just going to say, hey, listen, like I'm going to stay at my place. But we talked about it. And I think that maybe with a couple of years that we can really build this out into a better opportunity. And I was like, okay, I'll trust you. Let's do it. But within 6 months to a year, we need to see some kind of something like either ownership shares or higher pay or whatnot. When you're starting a business like that and you're number two, you're pulled to it all the time. You're the one who's leading this team. You're building these teams. You're making those decisions. Everybody needed him, but we were a young family. I needed him. And so there were times that he'd be like, okay, I'm going to be home early today, or I'm going to be home on time at 5 or 6. And then 7, 8 o'clock would roll around and he would just be walking in and be like, I'm so sorry. I got hung up on this. And I knew the people that he was working with, they were friends of mine. And so I knew that there were things that honestly were pulling him into that. But 6 months comes in and we're not seeing like any chatter of more growth or ownership or anything like that. And here we are sacrificing our family. I'm taking on more responsibilities. I'm barely getting to see my husband. It wasn't in a way that I felt like it was crumbling our marriage. It starts slowly. It starts in this way of, okay, I'm not going to be here. And so it'd be like a talk of, hey, like I feel like I'm being a parent by myself. And then it just gradually gets more and more. But I never thought it was a way that was going to demolish what we had, because I thought we had a very solid foundation. I thought it's just like those growing pains, but I really enjoyed who he was still. Like even with him going to work and doing that stuff, he supported me with my business so much. Anything I needed, he was there, and he's okay, let me help you here. So if he would get home at 8, then he would help me during my busy times to churn out orders and go to bed at 1 and then wake up and go into work. I really thought that I had it all. I thought I had an amazing marriage and a great life. I knew that like we were in our working hard hustle phase. Of course, we're going to have an uphill battle on these things. But if we just keep our heads down and work and care about each other, we're going to get past this. I think I thought I had a great marriage and everybody around me thought I had a great marriage. Everybody really loved Adam. We all thought he was an amazing, like if you were to write down what the perfect husband, father, and man was, it would have been him. Yeah, there were things that were sprinkled in here. Work started creeping in and that started creeping in slower and just took over more and more. I think I really thought that I had a partner that loved me and appreciated like my drive for things and that I wanted to work hard and that I wanted to build something. I really helped him throughout his schooling. And I thought, okay, he really wants to help me here and we're going to be that team. And as work went on, things just started creeping in more and more. Adam was paid by praise in a lot of lights. He loves affirmations like that. There were a lot of things with work that I just couldn't understand. Like, why are we staying at a place that is sucking the life out of us and putting so much stress on us, but we're not getting paid? And so there was a promotion that came up for him to go to work at the investment firm in Austin twice a month. So he'd be gone for about 2 weeks out of the month traveling to there. And again, never even questioned his like devotion to our family. Cheating was never even a thought process in my mind. My family was used to laugh because they were like, if anyone's going to cheat, it's probably going to be Sydney. But this opportunity came up and we sat down as a family and said, okay, either they're going to hit this number or this ownership share, or you're going to go back to school, to grad school. And so we all decided that. We sat down, said that. They came back with some foolish number. Adam came back and said, I'm taking this opportunity. And I think that's like the first time that I really felt like it was a slap in the face. I felt betrayed because here I am staying home with our child and doing all this work, and I feel like I'm not being heard. But again, like that's my husband and I'm going to support him. And I know that I talked to him and I was like, I just don't get this. This is not, we had set out to do this. We agreed upon this and now you're changing the plan. And I was happy for him in the way of, I'm excited that someone sees you, what you're capable of doing, but I don't feel like they're valuing you because they're not paying you. And that's how business works is you're paid, you're valued, and you get compensated for that. And I felt like it was like a praise. Yeah, we love you. You're doing all this, but we want you to do it for free. And so that was a very odd concept for me because I was raised around entrepreneurs who there's a give and take to it, but we were just giving and they were taking. So again, I want to reiterate a lot of this stuff is my perception on it. The facts based off of what I saw and what my family saw to things. We are going to be digging into the affair and the divorce in so many different episodes and getting everybody's take on it, how they saw it, because it caused a lot of trauma to everybody. This is just an overview of what happened. I always just thought it was like, this is what happens when you're going through, when you're hustling. You're going to have disagreements and you're going to work through them. And I think what happened is like Adam and I were just raised very differently. Like I grew up in a family where the women were very strong and opinionated and put their opinions. And then the men would be like, if they didn't like it, they'd be like, hey, I don't like this. Or there was communication or no communication. They didn't care. And I think Adam grew up in a situation where maybe he felt like he couldn't express those things. So it just was a recipe for disaster, really. These episodes, like today, talking about this, is going to paint somebody in a very negative light. And that's just how my perception of certain things were. It's not a witch hunt, though. It's just me telling my side of things. So I feel like I would go to Adam with my concerns and I would just be like pushed off. Yeah, no, you're right. I agree with you. Like we can't do this anymore. And then he would just keep on doing it and it just shut me down. And I didn't feel heard on that. And I'm sure he didn't feel heard. He felt here, I'm getting this promotion or I'm getting this title and no one's appreciative of it. But to keep it short, because even just finding out that he had an affair was like a 3-day thing. So I'm going to keep this really short. Anyway, the short version of it, Adam came home and said, I have had an affair. I am unhappy and I'm in love with this woman and I cannot be in this marriage anymore. That day changed my whole life. Like everything that I thought was real crumbled to the ground. And I'm probably going to get emotional talking about this, not because I haven't worked past a lot of things, but just remembering that pain. Oh, I can't tell you how painful that whole experience was. Just hearing the person that you love most come home and tell you that they were in love with someone that they just met, and everything that you spent the last 7 years building was a complete fucking lie, and your life was fake, and everything that you thought you knew was fake. My whole life was just ripped from my fucking fingers within a matter of seconds. Like I remember having a heart attack. What are you talking about? It was just crazy to me because you start replaying like every moment. Like, where did I miss this? Is that if it had been some fucking loser out there running around on me, or like that I knew Jesse, okay, fine, whatever. He was more loyal, but it wouldn't have shocked me. But Adam was the person that I valued so much. He was so trustworthy. He was just like everything. I had him on this pedestal. Everybody did. And so I'm just like replaying the last like couple weeks. And I'm like, literally the day that you had an affair and slept with another woman, you were texting me, being like, I can't wait to be home tomorrow. I'm so in love with you. I can't wait to see you in Sterling. I just miss you so much. The week before that, you're sitting there telling me like, I think we should have another kid. Like, how is this even? It's like we're living two separate lives. Like, it's a fake life. Like, someone's just feeding me bullshit the whole time. And that is really hard because I'm so authentic in so many ways. And to know you wake up and like within seconds, everything that you thought was real, your whole reality is just gone. And that was so life shattering because in that moment I knew that everything that was important to me, because I was raised by a single mom, like I wanted to have a family. I wanted my son to have his parents live under one roof. That was gone. And in that moment, I don't even know, because I feel like I'm such a strong woman in so many things, but Adam was my life partner. And I just tried to, for a long time, I tried to keep it together. Hey, like, we've got to work on this. Or I kept on going back and forth. Do I want to be with this person or do I not? But you start clinging to it. And I was just so taken aback because I was like, what do you mean? We're close friends. Like, we're friends. We love each other. Like, you will go to the ends of the earth. I would do that for you. Like, we just spent the last couple of years building an amazing life. We have a beautiful son. Like, we have this business. We have what you are capable of doing. Didn't make sense to me. It came out of left field. Like, what are you talking about? We have built a beautiful life together. And I was just like, every ounce of hope was just ripped from me. And the problem is it went on like for months, come back, or we try to figure it out. Or it was a mess. And I can't tell you how hard that was. Like, I knew our life wasn't perfect, but I just felt like we were life partners that we're going to figure out and we were going to go through this. And it wasn't like we didn't bicker and fight. We were not that couple. Like, it wasn't something that was tumultuous or anything like that. We did little date nights. And so it was just weird to me. And I was just so shocked at that he was the one to betray me. I felt betrayed in every sense of the way. Of here, I've been fed these lies. I've been thinking that you are the most amazing human. You love me. You love who I am. It just felt like during those like few months that I was out of my body and watching a movie, like a Lifetime movie, because it was just the craziest shit that happened too. Again, we'll get into that into other episodes and I'll tell you my experience with that. But it just the craziest shit was going down. And I didn't even feel like it was my life. Every night I would go to bed and hope that I would open my eyes and I would be like, it was just a nightmare. And you get to a point where you're like, nope, this is not a nightmare. It is my life. The affair, that sucked, obviously. But the biggest issue wasn't like, I'm not naive to people having affairs. I know things happen. But what was so shocking to me is how cold and mean they were during that. Him and his mistress. A lot of healing has gone into it. I was so taken aback at how things were handled. There was no remorse, or at least it wasn't shown to me. Just cold. I remember this one day. Adam had come back and was like, I want us to work on this. He'd come back several times, but it was really the final one. This was in February. All this stuff went down in September and October. We were separated in other apartments, and he was like, oh, I love her, blah, blah, blah. A couple times coming back and forth, and I didn't know what to do. In February, he had come back, and he had moved back in, or was staying at my apartment. And for a couple weeks, we were trying to work on things. He had quit his job because I'm like, you're going to go to Austin and be in a town that your mistress is at. You guys are going to see each other. And that's another heartbreaking thing, is like, watching your husband have an affair while you're not in the place. Anyway, he quit his job. And I remember we had gone out to the Yellow Dog Bakery, and we were sitting at this table, and it was like a really nice day out. I remember trying to talk to him, and I felt like I was talking to a fucking stranger. Legitimately. It was like staring in the eyes of a stranger. I didn't even know who this man is. Everything about him, the way that he held himself, the way that he carried himself was very different. I didn't like it. It just felt weird and awkward. And in that moment, I think I knew that our marriage was done. And I can't remember if it was that day or maybe the next day or something like that. But we got home, and when he had come back, he had told wide open to his whole family, all this jazz, had given us all of the passwords to everything. And so, again, when you have gone through that much and you're trying to trust somebody again, I was like just religiously always on his phone. Again, knew that's not the relationship I wanted, but here I am on his phone checking Instagram or checking his history, and I saw that he had been looking at her Instagram. And in that moment, I was just like, nope. I never want to have to go through my partner's phone and see if they are looking at their mistress's stuff. Like, I don't want to have to wonder when I look over, does he wish he was with her? Or is he with me because of pity or because we have a child? And I was just like, I don't want that kind of relationship. And I was really hoping, I knew what the outcome was going to be, but had hoped that and prayed that it would be different. But I told him, I said, Adam, I need you to get out of this apartment. If you want to be with me, you need to get over her first, and then us work on our things. And I knew what that answer was going to be. I had hoped and prayed and literally anything under the sun that, and I don't even know why, because that's not even something I'd want to do. But I think I was just like so set on that being my life partner, because I got married to someone that I actually loved. So later that night, he'd gone over to his sister's house, and I don't know why I looked at his email this night, and I saw that he sent her an email out of all things. Like, what? And he was just like, I can't get over you. Something like pretty much, I'm in love with you and I want to be with you. And my heart sank, and I saw her fucking email come back, and all rage hit in at this point, because she wrote back something along the lines of like, haha, I won. Like, I can't wait to be together, or something like that. And when you read something like that, there wasn't a muscle, a fiber of my being that did not want to burn my house down. I was sick to my stomach, because I couldn't even imagine, what the fuck do you see in somebody that you would take that as an appropriate response? Ha, I won, to ruining a family. Now, I know that's Adam's vow and not her, but you're complicit in this. And knowing that you were going to take a child away from his father. Everybody lacked character in that moment. It's been several years since then, but just the shit that was written in that email, I was sick to my stomach, because in that moment, I knew that my son was going to be around somebody that had no morals or lacked them in that moment. I don't know. I always think that the measure of a man is not measured when times are easy. It's when times are tough and you're actually challenged. And I just thought in that moment, wow, that's the woman he's leaving me for. I was so enraged. I was so sick to my stomach. I could not believe that another woman could do that. Or, I mean, him too. This is him, but reading that out loud was so sickening to me, because I just never thought that would be something that would be attractive to him. But anyway, whatever it was, yep. I just could never imagine being so careless and vile with other people's lives. It doesn't even come down to love. It comes down to power in that moment. And that's really what I sized that up to be. There was no remorse. It was just a fucking game. And it's vile to me. It's still, as much healing as I've done, it's just not the character that I want to surround myself with. At that moment, obviously, I knew it was done. But you cling on to this and you hope for different things. I don't know. Because it's not even like I wanted to be in a relationship like that. I never want to have to wonder. But it was just so foreign to me. That's how we could have gone from this to now where we were at then. But it changed everybody's life. And my family, it tore through our family hard. Everybody was really affected by it. It was hard to trust people. My uncle changed business practices, because he was like, if someone like that we thought we could trust, and they changed and did that and acted that way, we could never trust anybody else. I don't, looking at how I was treated by my husband at the time, I don't even think that I was clinging on to that marriage. I think I was clinging on to having the family that I always wanted. Is that the idea of what I thought my life was, and then knowing that it wasn't that. I really thought that I had found a partner who loved me for me, that I was defiant and bold and independent on so many things. But when I was still young and I had a lot to learn, and I feel like there's things that we could have probably worked out. Now that I'm so many years removed from it, I think the hardest thing was to grasp that the person I thought loved me and I loved and appreciated everything that they were and looked up to them, that they not only didn't like who I was, I think Adam hated who I was. Just things that were said or things that were brought up, or there were so many things that I was just like, wait a minute, that's how you felt? Like, why? It just tore me up, because when someone you hold to such a high regard or that you love, and yeah, he could have been brought down because he treated me like, obviously that's what he did, but that was not who I saw for the first 6 years of our being together in marriage. But it tore me up because I realized like he didn't like anything about me. And when the person that you consider your best friend and you the love of your life doesn't love those things, you question everything about yourself. Sorry, I told myself I wasn't going to get emotional, and it's not. I've worked on so much and have so much peace, but I just go back to that time. I just am in that time of remembering, like, battling. Well, this person that I hold so dearly doesn't even love me. Like, maybe I'm a horrible person. Like, maybe I'm miserable. Maybe I am just not good enough. And that fucked with me for a long time. And I had to really work at that stuff and go to therapy. That first year was the first couple of years were really hard because it was just like one thing after another. You know, that trauma is like a scab. It's a wound. It scabs over, and then every new thing just gets scraped off, and then you got to heal it again. And so my first like year, she had not moved here yet, but just going through that and acknowledging like my marriage is done. My life that I thought I had built and was amazing is now gone. It's fake. And now I have to rebuild again. And when I tell you that every day was exhausting, and like just brushing my teeth, taking a shower, getting ready was painful. It was exhausting. I didn't even know if I wanted. The only thing, not that I would have done anything, but I just felt like I couldn't continue on. And Sterling was the only thing that really pushed me forward. And like my family was there for me in a lot of ways. But when you lean on your family, it's 3, 4, 6 months goes by and they're like, okay. But for me, it was like the wound was fresh. Anytime something new would happen, it was just like, okay, and we're back again. So that first year was really hard. One thing I really dove into was my health. I think part of it was, oh, I want to show him. But the other part was, I think the biggest part, honestly, is I had no control over anything else. The only thing that I could control was my health. So I started walking like 6 or 7 miles a day because I just needed to do something and get out of the house. And I would just go to Lake Johnson and walk twice a day. I did meal prep. I planned everything out. And that's the only thing that I could manage. And during that time, I think over a year, I probably lost 70 pounds, 75 pounds or something like that. It was literally the only thing I could have control over. So I just managed the hell out of that. So again, I feel like there's no set healing time with something as traumatic as that. I think it's something that like you get to this point. A year out is probably, there are moments think, okay, I'd feel good for a week, and then something would happen and then I wouldn't feel good. And it's really hard to heal too when you have a bunch of assholes who you have to deal with, who are not remorseful or don't show that or don't take care, and they want to live their life and cross boundaries. So I'm 8 years out, I think 8 years out, and I'm in such a good place. But I remember, I think it was probably a year and a half into it when I had to find out from her that Adam was proposing or had proposed and that she was going to move here. I just think about the conversations with this woman and just how miserable she really is. But doesn't matter. But when I tell you I had a meltdown on that, when he told me she was moving here and they were buying a house together and starting a family, going to get married, I had a meltdown. because I was just like, you cannot bring this woman to my safe space. This is my town. This is my home. Like, move to Austin. You can go fuck whoever you want to in that shitty place. I don't care. But do not bring her here. I was like, I will send Sterling every week out to you. We'll figure it out. And I'm not moving. So just so many things that I was forced upon to do. But during that time, I think Adam has some emotions to that and knows, like, as much as he doesn't want to show me that or doesn't want to put it out there, I think he was like, okay, we're going to have to figure out how to make this work together. I try to be civil, and I was civil, but when you go through that, when your whole life has changed and then someone's just from the jump shoving down, this is going to be the relationship, you're going to have to deal with this, you're going to have to be the bigger person. You don't want to have to go through that. You're like, can you take a little fucking care for some things? You put me and Sterling through this hell, and now you're spoon feeding us this and acting like everything's okay, like you guys are family and like we divorced and then you met this woman. That's not how that happened. You can build your own reality around it, but that's not what happened. So anyway, he was like, let's get into counseling, you and I. So he chose a counselor. We go into the first family counseling meeting. Now this woman was an angel. She always held us accountable. She always held me accountable. But the first meeting, it's supposed to be an hour. Usually counseling sessions are about an hour. I had a family dinner. We got there around 5. The family dinner was around 7:30. I left that appointment at 7:15. It was the most tumultuous conversation. It was just, again, force feeding us this bullshit of like how I should be okay with this. At the end of the conversation, I got up and I don't want to say scream, maybe like a forceful, like I was just like, Adam, you can't turn a whore into a housewife. And well, kudos, he did do it. But yeah, I was just like, this is not a good relationship to show our son. This is going to dissolve because you guys are living in a fucking fairy tale land of having no responsibilities, but go for it. Sure. Let's see how long it goes. But I was just hurt that not only had I been through all that, we had been through all this, but now we have to sit through this again. But after that, I've gone to meet my family at dinner, and I was just like, it was my aunt, my cousin, my mom, and my grandmother. I told them about the therapy session. And at the dinner table, I was just silent. And I remember looking down at my phone and I was like, I need therapy because I'm going to be dealing with these people. And I need to have the best resources to know how to not let it affect my life in a negative light every time. So I wrote her and I was like, hey, listen, I really think I need to get into my own therapy. This woman was an angel. She sat there for hours. I was her last scheduled appointment. And some weeks I would go there once or twice a week and sit there for 2-3 hours and just talk about whatever I needed to talk about. And I think with therapy, you go in, and I probably saw her for the first 6 months every week, once or twice a week. And then it just dwindles down and you start seeing it's not an immediate thing, but you just start getting clarity on things. At some point, I think we went to a couple counseling sessions, co-parenting counseling sessions, and it became readily apparent that Adam didn't, I think he was thinking that the counselor was going to tell me that everything was my fault, but I don't think he was ready to hear that he also had work to do. And he wasn't really interested in that. Some people can't handle that. They wouldn't know how to survive if they had to work on those things. So he quit in a very abrupt way. And that was fine because my journey was my journey. So I really dug into things and worked on how I felt about the situation, how to be prepared to be able to be the best mom for Sterling, and then also how to be reactive or lack of reaction of when they weren't acting how they should towards me. And so that was probably over 1.5 2 years. And at some point I just felt like I was really equipped to be able to handle what I had already gone through, and I felt good. Like, you get to a point with counseling that you talk about the same stuff and you just feel like you're healed. And of course, there's always times that those wounds get open again, but you just move on from it. So while we were going through the divorce, I also started back in property management to get out there and get out of the house. And I really enjoyed that time because I got to meet people, be out of the home, find myself again. And I really do enjoy a lot of parts of property management. I got promoted and really took care of a beautiful property and had a great team. And then I got to a part where I was a couple of years in and figuring out what my life move was going to be. I love the boutique world, but I really didn't have the financial, when you're opening a boutique, you need hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I didn't really have access to that at that point. So I started digging in, and I really liked the acquisition side, but I knew I would have to go back to school for that. So around that time when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, Catherine had opened up the boutique. And she had asked if I would come down and help her open it up for the first week or two. And when we did that, it just worked. I really enjoy the business side of things. And so over the last, almost 6 years now, we've learned a lot about each other. We've learned there's failures, successes, just keep chugging and figuring out what the recipe for success is. We've changed our business model so many times of figuring out what worked because we had uphill battle with like COVID, opening multiple locations. But I really feel like where we're going, we're headed in the right direction and just like really enjoying where we're at. We have a work-life balance and really enjoy the people on our team now. Some are like family to us. I think one big thing to me is the opportunity. I don't know if I would have had this opportunity to do the boutique if things with Adam would have worked out. I don't know how that would have looked like. I really do think everything happens for a reason. I think now I'm so at peace with where my life is at and I enjoy my life. And when I was in it, I just couldn't figure how my life was how I was going to find happiness. But I'm so blessed that they did what they did because I realized I knew going through it, that's not what I wanted. But now being out of it and really healed to such a healthy level, I look back and think that's not the partner I want. I want a partner who can communicate with me and who can tell me things that we need to work on and who doesn't give up when times get tough, and somebody who looks at me and actually loves me for being bold. And as I've gotten older, I've fallen into my feminine energy of being able to support my partner. Going through the divorce, I realized that while the divorce and affair weren't my fault, I know that I had some small part to play. I know I was a great wife. I really do believe that to my core. There were times that I was sassy or maybe ungrateful for things that he did. I do look back at that and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry about those things. And I do care about Adam a lot. I want him to be happy because he gave me so much independence, or I really was able to unlock a part of me that I didn't even know was capable because of what I saw Adam doing. So I'm forever grateful for him on that. And I think he's a great dad. But I just realized that if that was the person that he was going to be, they did me the best favor that they ever could. And I don't ever want to have to question if my partner is cheating on me. And once you do that, you open up the door. And I just don't ever want to have to question if my partner loves me for being me. I never want to have to walk on eggshells. I want someone to be like, yes, she's fierce, she's bold, but she's also kind and she's caring. And that's the woman that I want to be with. That's who I value, not see that as a threat or something that's annoying to them. I support my partner and push them into the best things. And that's what I try to do. And I just want somebody to be able to communicate when times aren't like that. Because it's not that I'm not willing to change. It's that you have to communicate what you need to. But I am blessed for where I'm at and my healing. And I think parts of it made me a better person. I love my life. I love the people who are in my life. That was an eye-opener. I think we talked about other parts that were eye-openers of having people who care about you and show that. One thing I really love is my relationship with my son. I really try to lead my life after my divorce and seeing maybe some areas that I was very short on, maybe not so kind, or I'm just very black and white. I'm just blunt. And I don't want my son to see those examples and think that's how you should talk to somebody or how someone should talk to you. So in my house, we really lead with love and respect. And so there's times that he comes back where he'll get snippy. And I'm like, I don't know if that's what's going on in the other house, but that's not how we're going to do it in this house. Like, we are show love and respect. And if we can't do that, then we need to step out and come back in. And so I really love my relationship with him and where that's gone and how we've grown that. And not to say that we're perfect by any means. We get sassy with each other here and there, but then we're like, okay, we got to center ourselves. And I just love that. And I love that I get to be that mom. And I love, with all the heartache, I think I am able to be, I think this is possible without obviously the affair and the divorce. I think I just needed someone to tell me this, but I think I've been able to be a better partner since then and realize, okay, you don't have to be a bulldozer 24/7. You can say your opinion and let it go and just find your right partner. But I do think it's allowed me to give me space to find that. When dating, I never wanted that affair or that divorce to define who I was or how I handled love in dating. I am very much a romantic. I love love. I hope that I find somebody that I can click with on a long-term basis. I've dated and I've gone through and been in great relationships, even if they were short term, I try to appreciate everybody in the moment and know that not everybody's meant to go to the next chapter or the next page with us. And that's okay. I've had some really great relationships that taught me a lot about myself and taught me what I wanted. I wish all of them well. Like, I don't even wish Adam and his now wife any ill will, because I think that when you do that, it holds you back. I know a lot of people probably, like, when you put yourself out there on social media, one thing is I'm going to post the people who I'm dating. I have no shame in that. I know people are probably like, oh, she's dating someone new. Yeah, I am, because I'm 35 and trying to figure out what I want in my life. But that doesn't mean that those people aren't important in those, whether they're around for 3 months or 6 months or years. That's a part of my life, and that's memory. Just because I'm not with them anymore doesn't mean I don't want them to be a part of my memories or part of my life. I know people probably find it weird when I talk about my ex-husband or when I talk about past relationships very fluidly. It's because that was a part of my life and that has shaped me who I am. And it doesn't mean I want to be in that same space anymore. It means I can appreciate it and it's made me who I am today. And anybody who has an issue with that, you're going to have to deal with that. I post my life, and that's something I'm very transparent with Sterling on, is I'm never introducing him to people I'm not serious. If I'm in a relationship, within a month or two, that's when I start bringing Sterling in, because something that's important to me is knowing that partner is going to connect with Sterling. I don't like waiting. When I first started dating for the first 4 years, I don't think I brought anybody around Sterling. And then 6 months in, I brought them in, and it wasn't a great match. It wasn't someone that I would be like, they were great when everything, no responsibilities. And then I go into my responsibility side of my life and being a mom, and it wasn't that it was bad. It just wasn't how I wanted it to feel. So now I tell Sterling, I say, listen, Daddy has his person and they have happiness, and I want to find my happiness. And so I'm very thoughtful about how I bring people around you, but there might be people who are in our lives for a little bit and maybe they leave, and that's their time is meant for us in that way. We can have experiences with them and enjoy that time, but it doesn't always necessarily mean that they're going to continue on to that next chapter. I don't take that responsibility lightly, but I know that I would rather have somebody where I can figure out within a couple months if that's someone I want in my life long term, if that relationship with Sterling is great or it's not great. So yeah. I've also realized that everybody's going to have their own opinions. I know that there's probably people out there who listen to my podcast and talk about it or text each other, and I'm fine with that. Everybody has their own opinions. Not everyone's going to agree with mine. Doesn't bother me. The only opinion I have to worry about is myself and my sons. At the end of the day, that's all I care about. I love my family and I put their opinion into the basket, but I really just want to make sure that we're the ones who are happy in this. So again, I just wish everybody a lot of happiness in that. I feel like I'm at such a good place. I'm dating a really amazing guy who I would have never thought that the way that he came into my life was so crazy. And he's 10 years younger than me, but literally is one of the most mature men I've ever dated, even outside of 40 and 50-year-olds that I've dated. He's so kind. He is deliberate in how he handles, and I genuinely feel like he loves who I am, and he puts up his boundaries when I am a little sassy. He's like, okay, are we done here? And I love that about him because he doesn't allow me to push his boundaries down, but it's in a respectful way. And he's caring, and Sterling loves him, and he cares about Sterling. Sterling's birthday is tomorrow, and he's just, I want to get him a really thoughtful gift. And Sterling just learned how to ride a bike this week because he's always been terrified of bikes because he fell when he was younger and just rode off the bike. But he had texted me and I need you to open up the garage. I've got a bike. And I just like, that meant a lot to me because he cares about that. And I don't know if this is going to last 3 weeks, 6 months, or 3 years, or forever. I'm okay with that because I am enjoying the moment that I am in, and Sterling's enjoying it, and we're having fun. And we always say, we don't know where life is going to take us, but we're going to enjoy this moment. I try not to take any moment for granted. I really think that everything happens for a reason. And I've gone through the experiences I have and the hardships and joys that I have to be able to share that with other people. And maybe it'll change someone's outlook on things, or maybe it'll help somebody. Maybe it won't. Maybe people are like, shut the hell up, Sydney. But this podcast really means a lot to me because I want it to get out to people. But I just want to thank you all for following and supporting. It means a lot to me when you guys share, you subscribe, you comment. Those things get the word out. I hope this gives you a better understanding to who I am as a person and why I make the decisions or feel the way that I do. Life's too short to care about what other people think, and it can change in a moment. All right. I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Bye, guys. So one thing I realized that I forgot to touch on, I feel like when we're talking about things, you spend an hour and a half talking about your life story and forget so much of it. But one thing that I wanted to touch on is my grandmother on my father's side passed away, going on a little over 2 years now. And ever since that moment, my father and I have really reconnected and have focused on rebuilding what we didn't have. So that's a great plus. And I'm learning a lot about him. He's learning a lot about me as well. And then another area that I forgot to touch on, and I don't want to go too much into it because it's really my mother's story, but my mom in her later years kind of dealt with addiction of pain pills after her surgery that she had for her back. She's had a lot of health issues in her life that have kind of brought her down, and she's struggled with substance abuse. And so that has really affected our relationship as I gotten older. It was about 9 months that I had to cut her out of my life, and that was about 3 years ago. And so that was something that was super difficult to go through, but her and I have really worked to repair that relationship. When you are in active addiction, you knowingly or unknowingly try to manipulate those around you to hide the fact that you are in active addiction. But that plays a big part of my early 30s of going through that and also repairing that and setting our boundaries for things. But like I said, I don't want to go too much into that story because it's not mine to tell, but I'm just telling how that affected me. But I think that's definitely made me stronger in who I am and putting my boundaries and realizing sometimes, I think that leads into making sure that the relationships that you have in your life are beneficial. And now my mom has gone through so much and is really working to make sure that she's doing what she needs to do. So I think there's a lot about my life that people probably weren't sure of or didn't know how that worked. I think there's a lot about my life that from the outside looking in, sometimes it can look very different. And so I just wanted to give you guys a little more clarity about my story. So bye guys.
Fuck that shit, listen, ayy, look, cash flowing, pockets growing, wake up, bless every morning, just in case y'all didn't notice, I'm the fucking shit up in this bitch and everybody knows.